Today on the show, a Portland loan officer and real estate agent just got sentenced for a $17 million Ponzi scheme. EXP got pulled into a federal RESPA case in Seattle. LPT Realty quietly reserved a NASDAQ ticker, and an Instagram creator with almost 800,000 followers got banned by Airbnb simply for trying to warn people about a scam. Let's get into it. This kind of surprised me. LPT Realty's CEO, and then it goes of LPT International. So Michael Valdez, who I've met him before, great guy. He's been on the IPO press circuit talking about how a brokerage went from launch to reserving a NASDAQ ticker. The ticker is LPTA. So it went from launch to reserving that ticker in 3 years. Aperture Global is the luxury offshoot. The combined entity is positioning to be the first residential real estate brokerage initial public offering since Real Brokerage debuted it in 2021. You know, I always laugh whenever I'm trying to say something's up to date. I'm like, come on, guys, it's the 90s.
Yeah, makes you
Get
feel
with
old.
it. So Valdez, I remember him all the way back from the EXP days. He was EXP's chief growth officer. It says he was their chief growth officer before joining LPT. I knew him as the president. I believe he was the president of EXP Global. So they had EXP International or EXP Global. I can't quite remember. So I don't know if they moved him over as the chief growth officer or what his position was, but he was that. He was very high up over at EXP before joining LPT. Now he, sits at the front line for the next public real estate brokerage. Maybe they'll be the next public. Epic Realty claims they're going public this year, 2026, everybody. If you look anywhere, they keep saying they're going public. Have they reserved a ticker? I don't know. We should look that up. And honestly, it looks like they're using the same playbook the public market brokerages used to scale. So cap structure, share grants, all the aggressive recruiting. It's the same playbook that EXP used, the same playbook that Real Broker used. What's that reverse merger acquisition? Have you heard of that, where that's how somebody goes public?
Reverse merger? No.
So basically, they take some sort of already public company and then they acquire them and then they reverse merge into them.
Oh, like acquiring a public company and using that to take your company
I think
public.
that's what it is, but I'm not sure. So EXP went public that way. They didn't go public like a normal way. And I think it's called reverse merger, but I'm not sure. So we'll look it up because I clearly don't know what I'm talking about right now. I haven't had enough Diet Mountain Dew yet. But so I did thoroughly research it the first time Epic said it wanted to go public via that method. And I was like, what the hell is this shit? Because what was crazy to me is you don't need any of the same things that you would need to bring a normal company public. So it's fascinating to me. But one thing, let's talk about LPT. One thing that I find fascinating about this is that they're using it as a flex. They're using it as a flex that look at how fast we're going public. Within 3 years, or at least we reserved the ticker to almost go public within 3 years. And all the financial guys that I talk to, like Morgan Stanley reps, they're like, that is not a badge of honor. That is not something you want to do as a successful company. If you do go public, you want to delay going public as long as possible. The most successful companies wait to go public 10 to 16 years.
Not in real estate, not with the perception the way it is right now.
Let's talk about, the very first time you and I ever talked about going public and the conversation we had. I remember when you and I first met and we had a conversation, it went well, and then you kind of called me back and you were like, hey, by the way, just offhandedly asking, do you ever plan to go public? And I could tell it was kind of an afterthought question, but the way I was going to answer it would have a lot of impact going forward. So let's talk about that from your perspective, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I personally don't agree with real estate brokerages going public on either. As part of an agent, if you're an agent as part of a company, I don't think it's the end of the world. But especially from an investment standpoint, as an investor, I would never invest in a real estate company that's going to go public because I just don't see the value in their assets really being something that the brokerage actually controls. Um, we've talked, I think, already on this show, but basically, in my opinion, a real estate brokerage that goes public is like a software company where their software can get up and walk out the door and go to the competition at any given time. And I just don't see that as, really a viable investment personally. I do think if you're an agent and you happen to get in early before the IPO and everything, you stand to make potentially a little bit of money. But even what we've seen from, initially like EXP was kind of the first, big brokerage to do it. And then we saw Real do it. Progressively, we're seeing it's getting less and less successful. The stock prices are coming out less and less. And part of that is just being driven by the fact that look at EXP's stock and Real stock price in general. Like overall, the whole real estate brokerage as an investment, I think people are realizing like it's not a very good one. And I think of like Real right now, they're bringing on all this debt, which we don't know how it's all going to shake out, but so far we're hearing $550 million is going to be financed. And it's already wreaking havoc on the stock price. Real stock price went down. So I'm not a huge fan of having public brokerages. And the other big issue I had, and part of the reason I asked you that question is the second that a brokerage goes public, the agents that are kind of, helping build that brokerage and have a say in things lose a lot of say. And that was one thing for me why I was interested to see if, your plan with my real estate company was to ever go public, because I was like, I understood I was getting in very early in a brokerage that was a startup that was poised to just explode with growth. But I was like, I don't want to go through that whole entire process and then go public and lose out and basically waste, however many years it took us to get to that point. And so for me, I never really want to help build a brokerage that's planning to go public from a long-term, like staying at that brokerage standpoint. Now, yeah, if you can get in like a lot of people did, for example, at EXP, got a bunch of stock and then it went public and they made a ton of money. Okay, great. But I would make the argument that their long-term goal was not to be with EXP. It was just to make a lot of money really quickly.
I think that was beyond everybody's wildest dreams, though. I don't think they were like, this stock's going to explode the way that
No,
it did.
I don't think so. And I think part of it was new. And, anytime you have some type of new IPO, I think there were a few other brokerages who have gone public, but not at the scale that EXP did. So I think it was a new investment. There were people that were excited about it. But honestly, like now you look at Real's IPO and it wasn't a failure or
But
anything.
but it wasn't just that it was new, Josh. It was that it had already been public for a couple of years and then 2020 happened.
Yeah.
And when I joined EXP late 2018, I was the very first agent in my entire community to join EXP, and I was treated like a fucking leper. And people are like, how are you a legitimate agent without a real office, And how are you going to conduct business? And it was just unheard unheard of to conduct your real estate business without bringing your clients to your office, forcing them to sit down at your desk and writing the entire offer in front of them. That was just like what you did, you know?
Yeah. That created so much buzz like within the industry because there were a ton of agents that had that same opinion. Like, you can't not have an office. You can't,
Yes.
we're not going to test the norms.
And so then when 2020 happened and everybody was staying home and then the commercial market tanked. Okay. That was like the worst year for commercial agents because obviously restaurants, all kinds of commercial spaces, people are realizing we don't need this commercial space. So the two biggest stocks that I think I saw the biggest rise in were EXP Realty's stock and Peloton's. I mean, 2020 was a gold mine for EXP Realty and Peloton.
Yeah.
And there's never going to be like until somebody comes up with an original fucking thought again in real estate or in fitness or in, there's never going to be another explosion like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think you also look historically what was happening at that time, with the pandemic really taking off and like the economy was shifting so quickly. The other thing is that was a time we were dumping a ton of money into the economy. And so I just don't think you can compare EXP's IPO. I think they really kind of got lightning in a jar because of what everything that was going on. I don't think we'll ever see that again.
Perfect place at the perfect time. Yes.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of it was driven by being lucky that they did that right when the pandemic happened. The other thing that, that was right about the time the residential market was starting to just explode with the lower interest rates too. And EXP was positioned in a great spot because they were picking up a ton of new agents. But like right now, what we're seeing is that's kind of their Achilles heel is they've got a ton of agents, but they also have a ton of agents that aren't producing that got into the business when, let's face it, if you could fog a mirror, you could sell a house. And so, that fueled them. But like now with the revenue from this last year that they just released, like they're hurting. They've got a bunch of agents on the books, but not very many that are producing.
Yep. And that's the other thing is like it ain't all about the agent count. And for some reason, these brokerages, not every brokerage, but every large brokerage, that is their bragging point. It doesn't matter what their production numbers are. It doesn't matter anything else. They just care about their agent count. They're going to loop in all their referral agents. They're going to loop in every single agent. And that's why, a little bit ago, I made the decision at our brokerages, we're not going to publicize our agent count. You either want to be here because you like what the brokerage has to offer, or if agent count is important to you and you want to be at a brokerage with an agent count that you're like proud of, you like go be at a brokerage with an agent count that you're proud of. But I will tell you that those brokerages inflate their numbers. Those brokerages numbers are not real. If you go on their websites and stuff, Epic Realty's website had me in their agent count for an additional 8 months minimum after I left. How many others do they have?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because, we're in this vanity-based metric industry where to me, it's kind of like, all these large teams that are touting their GCI or even solo agents, oh, well, I sold, $75 million in volume. I made $3.32 after I cleared all my expenses and everything. I didn't make any money, but I had a lot of volume and I had a lot of sales. And you see that with the brokerages too. Well, we're losing money like crazy, but we've got a lot of agents and we're still growing. It's like, wait a second, like those two things don't really go together when we're talking about profitable business. And I know one of the biggest things that I'm so proud of at my real estate company is you look at the percentage of our agents that actually closed more than 2 deals last year. And I don't quote me on this, but I think it was like around 78% of our agents closed 2 deals.
And 100% closed at least one deal.
Yeah. And that's unheard of being that, I don't think they've released the numbers yet for 25, but in 24, it was only like 8% of agents actually closed a deal in the whole country. So,
That's terrifying.
that to me, like, you want to be around people who are working and who are closing deals. And if you're at a brokerage with people who don't do anything and don't close any deals and are only focused on recruiting more agents to build their downline, what benefit are you getting from that, as especially as like a newer agent? Um, but I think it just goes back to the whole, we're in an industry that's all about vanity metrics, and until we go away from that, we're going to continue to have this conversation.
All right. So I think this is a great time to experiment as we are launching this show to try something new. And one of the new things that we want to do is like react to reels. Well, I already know what reels we're about to watch, but I want to get Josh's reaction and I want to discuss. Um, we have another podcast called True Crime and Real Estate. And 2 episodes ago, so we run it every Tuesday. So 2 Tuesdays ago, last week, it was about short-term rental scams, Airbnb scams. And this is a different kind of Airbnb scam. And I was like, holy shit. It's just crazy how much crime there is out there, right? For real estate crime. And so I'm like, hey, this isn't enough to make an entire true crime and real estate episode. But this is something that should absolutely be highlighted and discussed because I cannot stand injustices. So if we can bring a little attention to this matter, especially in the real estate community, like let's do it. So Brian, take it away. Okay, let me enlarge in my screen now. Okay, so this guy's story, and you'll see who he is, but John Dorsey, right? I believe is his name. So he posted a story and it said Airbnb video coming after dinner. I like, boy, do I have a story for you. Blah, blah, blah. If you want to stay at an Airbnb of a criminal, who's going to send you fraudulent invoices afterward, like I'll let you know which one to stay at, right? Okay, so let's do the actual reel now, Brian.
So far, I'd say that's a great hook to get people
It's
watching.
a great lead in. Like this dude knows what he's doing.
I recently stayed at the Airbnb of a scammer. And I think that if that scammer knew who the person was that they were trying to pull a scam on, they would have probably never tried this shit in the first place. But fuck it, here we are. Marina Merrick, welcome to the show. So on Friday, I went to the RVA Fit Fest. Had a great time. Here's me and my friend Ross Flanagan. Here's me on the mic. I was emceeing a Buffin eating contest for Buffin Bakery. We really just had an amazing time. Awesome event. Highly recommend. For the event, I needed to book an Airbnb, and I picked this one in Richmond, Virginia, 1215 McDonough Street. The Airbnb has a 6-guest maximum. I booked it for myself, Runvas Coaching, his girlfriend, and Ross Flanagan, which by my count is 4 people. So we checked in, checked out yesterday, and I wake up this morning to 2 emails requesting money from me from these hosts. This first one for $115 for damage and mess left by unapproved guests. And the second one for $200 for violation of guest policy. Let's talk about both of them. They're a doozy. On Airbnb, when hosts make these claims, they have to fortify it with some proof. And I'm sure that they do that because tons of assholes will try to fake or lie about stuff to get more money out of their guests. Now, I just want to say this to begin. I paid around $800 to stay Friday and Saturday night at this Airbnb, which means Marina, she probably got about $600 net for this entire trip. And that's after insurances and Airbnbs taking their fee. So first things first. In the description, Marina said that we left burn marks on their patio furniture and submitted this photograph. Before I zoom in on the photograph and you guys see what it actually is, I don't smoke, none of my guests smoke, and this is outdoor furniture. And when you zoom in on the photo of the outdoor furniture, it's bird shit. Marina, that is bird shit. And I knew this was about to be a doozy because she submitted this receipt for the replacement cushion, a black cushion that is not even checked out. This is just asking for $15 for free for something she didn't buy for bird shit. Bird shit on your rooftop patio, Marina. Anyway, let's go on to the $100 charge. So for the $100, she submitted an invoice for cleaning that she says that she paid for the apartment. Now remember, she's only netting around $600 for this entire stay. And this invoice claims that she pays every time normal $250 for cleaning the apartment after somebody stays. And they assessed us an extra 1 hour cleaning fee of $100, which means to say they're saying it took 3.5 hours to clean an apartment that we barely stayed at because we were at an event the entire time for 2 days. But that's besides the point. This invoice has some additional interesting, funny secrets. You see, when you ask ChatGPT to do stuff, sometimes it makes little transpositions or mistakes that fuck it up for you, such as your phone number is being transposed. Instead of 4265, it's 4256, right here and right here. Such as if we look this number up on Zelle, it doesn't even come up to a valid Zelle account. And what about this invoice number 426-2026? Maybe all of those are little mistakes. How about if you look up Chrissy's cleaning company, and I encourage you guys to do it yourself for Richmond, Virginia. It doesn't exist. It's not a real company. And this is a fake fucking invoice generated by ChatGPT for this idiot to try to scam me for an extra $100 for my stay. Go ahead, guys. Take a screenshot of this. Try to find this company on your own and try to see if you can verify any of this information at all. Instead, what this is a ruse that they probably get over on everybody that stays there. Think if your grandma, your mother, your dad, or somebody just saw this and said, oh, well, I guess I have to pay it because they've already paid it out. Now, when Marina sent me this invoice, I asked for proof of payment that she actually paid the invoice. And instead of sending me proof of that payment, she just blocked me on the Airbnb app and submitted a claim against my account. Great move, Marina. Now let's talk about that other fee. $200 for a violation of the guest policy. They submitted this hilarious photo of my friend Ross Flanagan checking in when he arrived from his flight as their proof of us violating this guest policy. It is literally a 3-bedroom house that houses up to 6 people. We had 4 people, and at one point a friend came over to have lunch with us, which is 5 by my count, and you submitted no proof of that because you're a scamming piece of shit. But scamming isn't the only thing you do. See, I looked into you, Marina, because I was very interested to...
I had Brian pause it for a second. I want to warn you that this is the longest of the videos that we're watching because he's like, look, motherfuckers, I did all my research. This is a total fucking scam. So not only did he just show where all he was scammed, you know, it was like these far away pictures of, oh, there's a burn hole in the cushion, but it's bird shit. They post a Target cart screenshot, like not even, oh, I actually replaced this cushion. It's like, here's what it would cost me. And here's an invoice. And then here's a fake cleaning invoice and all this other crazy shit. And now he's about to go into this person's who all he did was take their publicly listed information, their publicly listed Airbnb, and now he's going to go into this person's criminal record. So go ahead and hit play, Brian.
To know what else you do in your life. And as it turns out, when I run a background check on you, you have over 31 entries on binverified.com. Some things pretty mundane, like possession, and some not so mundane, like battery. You were even arrested back in 2015 for possession of a concealed weapon. Now, that one got dismissed, but you have over 30 charges on here. Back in the day when I first started Airbnb, Airbnb had actually banned me because they confused me with another John Dorsey who had violence offenses. Do they know about your battery? Well, if they don't, they're going to know now because we're going to tag them in the comments. Anywho, you guys can help me by doing this. Go on your own Airbnb app, find this listing in Richmond, Virginia. It's the 11215 McDonough Street. This is the first photograph, and report it because these people are no good scamming thieves, and I will not be fucked with.
Okay, so that's the first one. All right. What would you like? What are your initial thoughts and reactions, Josh?
I mean, for me, I think it's interesting. I have prior knowledge with Airbnb management company, and I can see how easy it would be if you really wanted to do a scam like this, how easy it would be. And part of it is because Airbnb gives the owners so much latitude when it comes to billing and cleaning fees and additional fees that can be charged, that some people do, some people don't. Like in this situation, there's a lot of owners and hosts that are sending invoices outside of Airbnb's platform, which is a total violation, but they don't care. And how do you prove it? So I'm not really surprised to hear this. I think it's interesting. It's like if I was going to do a scam like this, I'd take a little more time to make it like somewhat reason, like make sure my invoices were good, make sure my phone number is good on the invoice. This is a pretty, in my opinion, not very well thought out scam. But like he kind of alluded to, a lot of people are just going to pay the extra $300 and not worry about it. They're just
I
like,
probably would have paid it. I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought I would have been like, this is fucking annoying, but whatever. I don't have the time to, mess around with it, deal with it. Like, I just know I'm never going to stay at that place again. And like, I'll remember never to use that seller again or whatever. And this platform's set up to where you're afraid to leave a bad review because then you get a bad review and it starts to like, it's just like Uber, right? You
Yeah.
know? Now my next question for you is if you're Airbnb and not only do you see this video, okay, but you're tagged by somebody with almost 1 million followers who creates this video, what would you as a company, what would be your actions?
I mean, I think, first of all, I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. There's two sides to every story, but I think there needs to be some form of due diligence and investigation done to really see what's going on here. And then I think very, quick action needs to be taken on either this guy, someone's lying here, someone's full of crap. And that person should be held accountable. And either, if it's the person that rented, they need their account banned. Which is kind of funny because with Airbnb, you just create a new email address and you have a new account. So I know they've tried to implement some other ID type features, but it's, to my knowledge right now, it's still easy just to make a second account if you get banned. Same thing on the seller side of things. If they were the ones that were truly doing a scam, which it sounds like they probably are, this guy came with receipts. So
Pretty big receipts, exactly.
yeah, but I think you got to ban that host as a platform. But once again, the problem is what I've seen with this too is, one host will get banned. They'll just create a second LLC real quickly. And then next thing you know, they're back on Airbnb with the same listing, just a different name and a different company. So I think that's part of the problem with Airbnb's platform is like banning an account really isn't doing you any good. On either side of things. But overall, I'm not really surprised. I do think Airbnb is a great idea. And I think, it's a great platform. And I do like the fact that it's kind of self-policed with the review system and all those type of things. I think it's good. But, when you're a self-policed type platform like that, you're exposed and you're opening yourself up to get scammed. And I think that's one thing people need to understand. I see a lot of people that give way too much trust to Airbnb's platform. And it's
So speaking of trust, let's hold that thought. Brian, play the next reel.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to.
Okay, so you can mute it. Let's just talk about it. The order of these reels is the next one says, hey, I got an email from Airbnb that says they're looking into it. That's good. Or not, maybe an email or maybe even a DM. All right. Airbnb says they're investigating it. That's great. Let me know how this works out. The reason that I posted this is I'm very concerned that this will happen to like an old lady or whatever. This could be anybody that this happens to. And so many people pay it and I don't, they fucked with the wrong one. Okay. Then he posts another update and it says, hey, Airbnb, it's been 2 whole days and it's been crickets. I haven't heard anything from you. All of my followers are expecting an update and this listing is still up. The seller's still up. What's the update? And then what Brian had just put up there was Airbnb banning this person, the social media account, because for bullying and harassment of that seller. And that seller is still on the Airbnb account. No
Yeah.
problem. Because he posted about the situation. They said that he like listed all kinds of personal identifying information. And to me, I disagree. That was all public information. He's not listing that person's home address. He's not like, hey, this is where their kids go to school or anything like crazy. I think he, and it specifically even mentioned like that listing their criminal record was wrong. I disagree with that. Airbnb should be doing their job. So they banned his account for warning almost 1 million people against a seller like this. And they kept the seller. They haven't even said, hey, we've also disciplined the seller. You're in the wrong and they're in the wrong. They didn't even say that.
Yeah. Well, and that doesn't surprise me one bit. I saw this when we would get disputes with that company, that Airbnb management company that I was associated with. When they would get disputes, it was very clear that the dispute resolution is weighted towards the host and the seller. Because let's face it, without the host, Airbnb doesn't have a platform. And so there were a lot of situations where I was like, there's no way that they're going to take our side on this situation. And the platform would, because they didn't want to piss off sellers and lose. And I think part of that is I'm in a small market. There's not a lot of Airbnbs to begin with. And there's really, you can tell in this market, they're trying to get a lot more Airbnbs. But, like their resolution process was heavily weighted towards favoring the host. So I get it. Like they're trying to make money too. And without these hosts, they don't have anything.
I'll never use Airbnb. I used it once in 2020 and my experience was disgusting. It was in a gentrified area that I wasn't aware of because it was like, I wasn't used to that area. I didn't know where it was going to be. So it looked like a nice place in the pictures, but it was definitely not a good neighborhood. I was nervous, right? And then all of a sudden, the cleaning, it was kind of gross. My towels smelled like mildew, like all this other shit, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to stick to hotels. They are dependable. They're chains. They're reliable. Like, I'm just going to stick to hotels because I realized that I don't care how good the next Airbnb is going to be. The fact that I'm not sure what kind of experience I'm going to have and that it would be a toss up, I'm just not going to do it. Yeah. And seeing that, I was like, it solidified my decision even more. Just the fact that they clearly don't give a shit about the consumer. So yeah, you think that you don't have Airbnb without the properties? Guess what it is without the consumers.
Yeah. Well, and it's a catch-22. I think ultimately this is a prime situation of lack of competition is really harming the consumer. And I think that's Airbnb is such a behemoth. Let's face it, like, especially when we're talking nationwide, they don't really have any competition. And so they can really do whatever they want. And if you're a host or, you're going to put up with it because let's face it, it gets you more bookings, it gets you more, options. And if you're a consumer, there's very few people like you, Sandi Lyn. They're like, well, I like the fact that I can rent a whole home. I'm willing to put up the bad to get that, even though I know it's going to be hit and miss. And when you don't have any competition, you're basically getting customers under the guise of like, well, it's good enough, where if you actually had competition, you have to be better than them.
If I have to take out my own trash and load up a dishwasher when I travel, it's a no-go for me. Nope.
And what I would like to see with Airbnb is just flat rate pricing. It's X amount of dollars per night, no fees, no nothing. That is what you pay. Obviously, yeah, if you put your hand through the wall or something like that, there's going to be extra damages, except.
But that's the same way with a hotel. I can't go fucking destroy it,
Yeah. And I'm like, if that type of pricing works for a hotel, why do we not just take that to Airbnb? But I also think it's all a marketing play, because let's face it, they can put a rental online and compete with the hotels, because if you put it up there for $110 a night, but really by the time you pay all the fees, it's, $250 a night, but they don't have to advertise that. So now they can compete with the hotel a lot better. So I get it why they're doing it from a marketing standpoint, but ultimately I think you just throw, it's this price per night, like a hotel, and that's it. That's what you pay. When you're done, you're done. As long as you don't destroy the house or something.
Let's lead into the next topic. That's also true crime and real estate. Portland Ponzi. So Portland real estate investment advisors Robert Christensen, a residential loan officer, and Anthony Maddock, a real estate agent, were sentenced May 5th, that's yesterday, in Oregon federal court for running what prosecutors described as a Ponzi scheme and it's like allegedly, but like they were sentenced. So they fucking had a Ponzi scheme that defrauded commercial lenders out of more than $7 million and individual investors out of more than $10 million. So that's $17 million. The pair told investors funds would buy and renovate undervalued residential properties, then refinance to extract value, returning 8 to 15% inside 30 to 90-day windows. Christensen received 63 months and Maddock received 33 months. Both actually pleaded guilty. So it's actually interesting because this isn't the typical like lone wolf Ponzi scheme that we kind of see a lot of the time. It's a loan officer plus a licensed agent running the scheme together, hitting both individual investors and commercial lenders. The structure tells you that the brokerage and the lender, so there were so many checks and balances in place that should have caught this, and they didn't. And you know what's crazy about this, Josh, is in our true crime and real estate podcast, do you know how many fucking Ponzi schemes I have to put on the back burner?
A lot.
How is this happening so much?
I think it just goes back to it's the market that we're in. And a lot of times, let's face it, we don't teach real estate. Like, for example, in schools, we don't teach owning real estate. We don't teach, and so I think because we're not educating consumers about this, and a lot of times the only education you get is you're like, hey, I want to buy a house. And then you kind of get thrown down, the chute right away. So we're not really educating the consumer on it. And I think that leaves them open to get scammed with things like this, because you get a loan officer and a real estate agent who, let's face it, they should have authority in this area. And they start using some big words about, refinance and taking the equity out. And, oh, it sounds great. Where do I sign up? But once again, I think it falls in the category of, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Those returns in 30 to 60 days, you are not going to get those anywhere else. I think it's funny too, because for anybody that doesn't know, Portland, that's my old market. That's where I started in real estate. And I need to look up, one of those names sounds very, very familiar. Nuh-uh. So I need to get a picture of this guy because that name sounds familiar. So I'm curious now.
The agent or the loan officer?
The agent, that Robert Christensen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that name sounds really familiar to me, and I can't put a face with it, but I find it interesting. That's in my old market. The other thing that's interesting too, right now in Portland, they're having a huge issue with commercial real estate being vacant, and it's causing a lot of problems for values, especially in the downtown area. Commercial values are just going down in the tank. One of the big Marriott buildings, I think a couple years ago, sold for $10 million. It just sold again for $3 million. And
I heard Lewis is having the same issue where there's these huge skyscrapers selling for just a few million. That's it. But it
Yeah.
just goes to show you commercial real estate is not doing well because everything can be so fully remote. And I'll never forget when I was in a completely different life. I was an emergency planner, continuity of operations planner. What would happen if all these different, whether they're terrorism or natural disaster related emergencies, how would we continue operations, right? And when I was working for the government, I had suggested, hey, we should start allowing more telework for everybody at least once a week, at least one day a week. Let's let, our employees take different days where they telework that one day at home. I was basically, Josh, I was laughed out of my fucking job.
Yeah.
Laughed out of my job in 2017. They're like, they had the whole mindset. I had to come to work every day, blah, 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 blah. And honestly, I was like, look, you're going to have a hard time attracting younger workers. Like the average age of a government worker, they're like in their 50s. That's not good.
Yeah.
You need some young blood coming in here, or everybody's going to retire at the same time and the country's going to collapse.
Yeah.
But who am I to have an idea? I don't know. So then 2020 happened and I'd never felt so validated in my entire life. But obviously, they figured it out somehow, but I'm sure it was a shit show.
Well, and I think, that's one thing. Like Portland was very susceptible to stuff like this because you have a huge decrease in commercial property values. Another thing that's going on in that market, or it was as I was leaving, is the Portland metro area was increasing taxes like exponentially for businesses. And so people were just jumping out and going to the next county over, which was only a 15-minute drive for their employees to drive further to a different county where they were offering tax breaks and tax.
Why do they think that that's the answer? It's so insane. And then also, like everybody in Portland, nobody has a real job. So why would they be in commercial buildings working?
Yeah, I had a real job when I lived there. So
But all I do is when I picture somebody in Portland, I picture them dressing up in cosplay and running around a park. Like, I don't know, with swords or something. Like, that's all I picture with Portland. Having fun with imaginary games.
You're not wrong, I don't think. So, but I think they found a spot, and I don't think Portland is the only city where this is very, there's probably a lot of fraud going on. And I think right now you've kind of got a perfect storm, kind of like we talked about with EXP, where you've got a lot of these commercial buildings in downtown urban areas that are extremely devalued. You have these investors that are coming in buying them for cheap, but in order to do it, they're bringing in all these other investors. So let's face it, they don't want to use their own money. Why not use some investor money? And the problem that I have with it is, with what we've seen, I'm not necessarily 100% convinced that commercial real estate is ever going to rebound to the level that it was before. It might not, but for me, I don't know if I'm really willing to take that risk because of what you just talked about. Like, companies are understanding now. I don't think we're ever going to go to a fully remote schedule because I think companies have found that doesn't really work in most industries. Mm-hmm. But I do think like a hybrid model is what we're going to see moving forward. And the other thing about it is, from a business standpoint, normally your building and your rent is one of your highest expenses. And if you can get rid of that, why would you not? Like, that's more profit in the business's pocket.
I'd tell you right now, Josh, I'd invest in farmland before I'd ever invest in commercial real estate.
Oh, I think so. But I think that's, unfortunately, that's leaving a lot of people to get scammed because you've got these slick talking, we're going to buy this building was worth $10 million just a couple years ago. And now you can take advantage of the down market and we're going to buy it for $3 million and flip it around. And then you're going to, it's, if you're not educated on this stuff, and especially, I'll be honest with you, like, I'm not big into commercial.
You're going to rely on an expert to guide you. And these were licensed fucking agents.
Yeah. Well, and like, for me, I think it's the real moral of the story is before you get involved in these type of investment type things and everything, because some of them are good, it is a great way to investing in real estate is a great thing. But before you get involved in these, like, seek out third-party experts that aren't associated with this deal, get better opinions, because I think a lot of the times when you do that, very quickly they're like, run, cut bait, get out of there. It's not for you.
What I think it is, so that's like on the buyer side of things, right? But let's talk about, and we'll wrap it up, but let's talk about what the lesson is for the agent side of it. Because I am of the mindset, especially after having done this true crime and real estate podcast for as long as I have, but I don't believe anybody starts off saying, I'm going to build a Ponzi scheme. I think that it's truly like they accidentally get in over their head and they keep convincing themselves that they're going to like pay all these people back. And then it starts getting away from them. And then they don't even almost realize what they're doing is illegal until they're so deep into it. And then they're like, fuck it at that point. That's what I think happens every single time.
And I would agree. I think maybe 1 in every 100, you get that scammer that just is running a scam.
Yeah.
But I
like
do
that
agree.
Airbnb asshole.
Yeah. But I do agree. I think a lot of times agents, let's face it, I think that's part of the problem with this industry is we have a fog the mirror test to become an agent. Pretty much if you can fog a mirror, you can get a real estate license, and all of a sudden you're an expert and professional. And then you get sucked into an idea because you really don't know as a new agent of, oh, this is a great investment opportunity. And then you start telling all your clients about it, and they just were like, well, man, this guy, he's a licensed agent. He should know what's going on. And next thing you know, I do think a lot of agents are just in over their head. And especially with the way a lot of the like flip, investment type schemes, we'll call them, they're not all scams, but I'll call them a scheme, especially the way that those work. Like, they're great for one person, like if you're doing fix and flips as just you as a contractor, you can make decent money doing that. But the problem is, like, when you're bringing in all these people, your profits get so small that it's like, what's the point anymore? But then, you need them for your next flip. So you're going to probably give them a little bit more of a, bump so that they'll reinvest. And then next thing you know, I agree with you. You're in over your head. And how do you stop, And then it's that whole fight between, the greed, because you start seeing the money come in too, even though it's all going out the door.
Yeah.
Which is a typical real estate thing. Like, how many agents do we see that's their commission check is spent as soon as it hits the bank,
or before it hits the bank, they're counting on it, they've already spent it in their head or even on paper. And then or even, with these commission e-loan systems, these commission advance system, like these agents get trapped big time. So that's a whole other episode.
Yeah. And I think it's just one of those things where just because you have a real estate license doesn't mean you should be doing anything. And I always tell agents too, like a lot of new agents that I talk to, especially when I was mentoring new agents, that everybody wants to be an investor. I want to work with investors. I want to do investment, blah, blah, blah. It's like, do you have the skills to work with investors? And I would talk to agents all the time. Like, if you're going to work with investors, you need to understand, you have to understand cap rates. You need to be able to talk about multiple doors and how does that affect everything. And if you can't speak to those things, you probably shouldn't be working with those people. And I think a lot of that is because it opens you to being scammed, and then as an agent, what do? You don't know you're getting scammed, but then you drag all your clients into the scam with you. So.
Oh my God. All right. Well, that's all for today. If you have an agent friend that needs to hear this, tag them, drop a comment if you have a story that you want us to dig into next. But we'll see you back here tomorrow at noon, Central Standard Time, unfiltered. See you guys later. Oh, I like that ending.